The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
I am happy to present a real valued member of the ESL community in Tennessee. She has played a number of roles over the years, but she's coming to us today. She's an ESL teacher in Rutherford County, but she is also the advocacy representative on the 10 TESOL board in Tennessee. And she was appointed took that position this year and will have it for until 2030, I believe. So Dr. Jana Paraiso, she will be presenting to us today. She and Dr. Byron Booker from, he is now in, is he in Jefferson County? They have, and he's on the board of 10 TESOL as well. They have been monitoring the Tennessee General Assembly over the last term, because as we know, there was multiple bills presented that would affect our English learners. And so they monitored as the bills either moved through and were passed or moved and did not pass. So she is bringing to us today a legislative report, and it, I know, will inspire us to have conversations about how does this affect our kids, our students, and their families. So I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Jana Paraiso, and y'all know her. Y'all know her. So thank you for being here. I look forward to this presentation.
Thank you. I am so glad to be with you all. You are old friends and new friends, and some friends I haven't met yet. My name's Jana Paraiso. I am an ESL teacher in Rutherford County. I am also the advocacy representative for Tennessee TESOL, and have done a lot of different tasks over the years. This last year has been challenging in a number of ways for our families. Let me speak specifically to some of my experiences. Of course, the title of our presentation is Navigating Tennessee's Legislative Landscape, Implications for Students in Districts and Families. There has been a lot of proposed legislation that didn't pass, a lot of talk, hopeful legislation. There are three words I would like for you to remember. One is preference, one is policy, and one is practice. Just because a legislator has a preference for a school or a district to be run a certain way does not mean that that is now policy. And then if we do adopt a policy, we have to go through steps to put that into practice. So we'll be talking about how just because you hear it in the news does not necessarily mean that's what we're going to be doing on Monday morning in September in our classroom. There are steps and there are advocacy groups that are challenging some of the propositions that have come across, and we'll talk about some of those. Unfortunately, my colleague, Dr. Booker, could not be here today. I know he would have liked to have been. Some of our session objectives, which I will not be reading these, and you will have access to this in your handouts. We're going to understand major Tennessee legislative activity that affects our English language learners. We're going to distinguish enacted laws from proposed or failed legislation. And we're going to take a look at some practical implications for our schools. Again, remember, preference, just because somebody wants it doesn't mean that we have to do it. Preference, policy, practice. So when ICE started having a more pronounced presence in Rutherford County, and I'm going to talk very specifically about my lived experience. I teach parent classes at night, and I noticed that our parents started not coming. And our parents started asking me about online school. I would like to do English classes, but can we do it online? Can we move our class online? And I have done that for some. There have been more inquiries in Rutherford County Virtual School. That's another subject that I will get to. But I noticed a lot of fear among my parents that come to my night classes. They were afraid for themselves. There were several nights that we just didn't meet because they were too scared, especially in January. Seemed like January, February, when there was so much in the news in Minnesota, our families were absolutely terrified. And that was big. You know, we all studied Maslow, that students that feel safe and cared for learn better. That applies to our adult students as well. So that underscored to me the importance of our being aware of what is happening, but not being overcome by what is happening. Because again, just because somebody prefers a particular practice doesn't mean that it's policy. There are steps. So, the current context is this. There is definitely increased ICE presence to those of us that work with immigrants. Students may face chronic stress because their families are at risk of being separated, or they might be a mixed status family. And what our kids and our administrators need to know is that schools must provide safe, inclusive spaces for our kids. That hasn't changed. As of right now today, and yes, this is an ever-changing landscape, as of right now today, our practices have not changed. When legislation first started being proposed, I had more than one administrator stop me and say, what do I do if ICE comes to my school? Good question. We have FERPA laws that protect our children from anyone coming to the school. So I told our administrators, and I'll talk more about this, you don't need to let them in. You need to call your district's leadership and say, hey, we've got somebody here asking. And again, I will reiterate that every district has a protocol in place for if this happens. They're not going to put it on their website, but you need to be aware that if there is, not just ICE, but if law enforcement of any kind, or if a non-custodial parent, there is a protocol in place for if someone comes to school and wants either information about a student or they want contact with a student. Schools are still under an obligation to protect those kids. That hasn't changed, in spite of somebody's preferences, perhaps. Now, this is where it gets a little dicey for us. I know that you all are familiar with this, but I am going to say it anyway. There are 3 foundational court cases. The first one is Lau versus Nichols. That established the practice of ESL, that students need to be taught in their home language. That's not really being challenged in courts. That's what they call stare decisis, which is established law. That doesn't mean that it won't be challenged at some point. It's just not being challenged at the moment. Castaneda versus Pickard. That's another one. Not really being challenged at the moment. This court case just said that we have to teach kids real stuff. So the wonderful presentation that my colleagues from Rutherford just did, the presentations we've heard before, that's real instruction. Used to be, back in the day, they would give the kids a coloring paper and stick them in the back of the classroom. And that may sound like ancient history, but I remember that. I remember when, if a kid didn't speak English very well, it was too bad, do the best you can. Or here's a baby book, make it work. Castaneda versus Pickard is not really being challenged at this time. What we are seeing is a concentrated effort on the Plyler v. Doe case, and this affects us in the classroom, in the district, very, very definitely. Plyler v. Doe was a court case that was decided by the Supreme Court in 1981, and it said that all children under the age of 18, regardless of immigration status, are entitled to a free public education. This is why we never ask if a student is documented or not. A student may not have a Social Security number. We don't question that. This is the particular court case that is under attack right now. Tennessee had a law on the books that did not pass last spring, and it came through again this year, and also did not pass. And this was going to require school districts to document the immigration status of every student. This was scary, not only because our students did not want to disclose their immigration status, but the infrastructure of our districts was not prepared to handle this. It would have cost millions of dollars to upgrade student information systems to carry that data. And I know I had a discussion with our coordinator at the time, and she was just like, this can't pass because we can't keep track of all that. Our program doesn't do that. Plyler v. Doe in 1981 did pass by a 5-4 Supreme Court decision. It was a very different court back then. If Plyler v. Doe were to come before this Supreme Court, we might have a very different outcome. Now, that being said, I am so sorry about the teeny tiny text on this, but you've got it in your handout. There are 7 states. There's one not listed. I can't remember which one. There are 7 states that have every intention of challenging Plyler. And Tennessee was indeed one of them, and that didn't work out. Ohio has been one, Oklahoma. So the Plyler decision is definitely in the crosshairs. I was grateful that Tennessee was not the one that was selected to take this to the Supreme Court. There are groups which I won't name right now, but there are groups that are seeking specifically to overturn Plyler. So this will come up again. It might not come up in Tennessee, but if it is challenged by Oklahoma and the Supreme Court rules a certain way, then we in Tennessee will have to live with that decision. We're not there yet. Remember, preference, policy, practice. We're at the preference stage, but it can move very quickly from one to the other. Now, the bill that I was talking about specifically before was House Bill 793, and it was Senate Bill, I'm going to get my numbers wrong, 836, and this is in the Tennessee General Assembly. The first time it was proposed, it was defeated because, honestly, because the powers that be were afraid we would lose about a billion with a B dollars in federal funding, which we probably would have. So they amended it. So they were trying to make it policy. They took it from preference, and they were trying to make it policy. So this bill did not pass in the fall or in the spring of '25. It did not pass again in 26 because they could not agree on the specifics. Would it be challenged? Would we lose money if it was passed? Now, there was something that was a little bit frightening, and I watched this very closely. They were hoping, and I keep saying they as the legislators, various legislators, they were hoping to we just want to collect the data. We just want to collect the data, the immigration status of the kids. We're not going to say, the bill in 25 said that school districts did not have to accept students that were undocumented, or they could charge them tuition. Well, that's blatant. That's in-your-face violation of Plyler. In 26, it said, no, they can still come. We just want to document their immigration status. We want to collect the data. Well, for what? Oh, we just want to see how much of our money is going to teach students that are not documented. And we did not have the capacity in our student information systems to record that. So neither one of those versions passed. So as of today, as of right now, students that are not documented in Tennessee are still entitled to a free public education. We still cannot ask them, are you documented? Are you legal? We cannot ask them that question. If they do not have a Social Security number, when they register, they will be given a number to use. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So as of right now, it stopped at preference. They tried to make it policy, did not happen. So as of today, our practice has not changed. Do you have any, I'm going to stop for just a second. Do you have any questions, concerns, experiences about this before I go on? None? Okay. Good. This talks more specifically about the amended version and what it would have done. The bottom sentence is the most important. The amended version stated that students could still attend school even if they didn't provide documentation. That also violated FERPA, and we have gotten a lot of protection from FERPA. Thank goodness, it has protected our students. However, there have been some other legislative proposals that, again, have not passed into policy. So we are not putting them into practice. HB 1711, SB 2108, this past spring, was seeking to tally up what kind of benefits our undocumented folks took advantage of. That bill also failed. Again, we did not have the infrastructure to put it into practice. Don't think for a minute that those who have this preference have not already been thinking about how they can get it through. If not in Tennessee, then in Oklahoma, Ohio, Idaho, other places. Okay, the current Tennessee legislature is extremely conservative, and I am not here to make any kind of a political statement whatsoever. There are some lovely conservative folks that are very much against what ICE is doing, very much against the way this is being enforced. Let me give you another story. One of the schools I cover is an alternative school, like I said this morning, and it's for our kiddos that have had a challenge in a regular high school, middle school. And I had a girl that I'm going to call Maria because that was not her name, And last spring, she lived off Bradyville Road here in Murfreesboro. Last spring, her dad took her to the bus stop to get on the bus to come to school. He was walking her to the bus stop, so he didn't have any identification on him. And he got her on the bus, he turned around, and ICE officers detained him. He was here legally. He had all of his documentation. He was not a citizen, but he kept telling them, I have documentation at my house. They wouldn't let him go back to his house. She saw him from the bus. And when she came to school, they came and got me. And they said, Maria is absolutely hysterical. No kidding. This was about 2 weeks before school let out. So I got her to talk to me, what is going on? So over the next few days, her dad was sent to Louisiana to a detention center. He was able to get an attorney. And the attorney told him, you are documented. I can get you out of the detention center and get you back home. Here's the challenge. Your wife is not documented. Your children are mixed status. So you are already on the radar. If I get you back and send you home, something else may happen. And so every day, she couldn't concentrate in school. Okay, school was done for her the day that her dad was detained. It was over. And so she did not know what she was going to do. So while I was desperately trying to teach her some writing skills, we made friendship bracelets. Here, let's write a little bit. Let's make a friendship bracelet. And she said, so when I go back to Mexico, she was from Mexico. When I go back to Mexico, teacher, I can remember you and then you can remember me. So that's what we did. And so we would write about the friendship bracelets because I had little shells. And I would say, so tell me something about the shell. What does this make you think of? And she would look at it. And she would say, there are shells on the beach in Mexico. Okay, great. Write it down. Write this down. What color is it? Oh, it's brown and white striped. You can make a lesson out of anything if you have to. And I had to. The family decided to self-deport. Dad went to Mexico. He did not come back home. Maria and her family went back to Mexico. I have heard from her since, and she's in school. Their school system is a little different than ours, so she was in 10th grade here, but she's already graduated there. And last I heard from her, she was literally looking for a job on the beach selling seashell jewelry, which is, how is that, right? But the children are being traumatized by the things they see, the things they live. And again, I can only share with you factually my lived experience, and that was one. The current Tennessee legislature is committed to maintaining ICE traffic stops and detentions. That's the world we live in. Okay, the current Tennessee legislature, and I've already touched on this. 25-26 saw a lot of preferences, few policies. There were some. 26-27 promises to be much the same. They are looking, instead of directly attacking schools, because they were getting a lot of pushbacks from parents as well. Think about this. And this happened in one of our schools in Rutherford County. One of our high schools. Several of the star soccer players stopped playing soccer because their parents couldn't come to games. And their parents were afraid to come pick them up after soccer practice because they were afraid of being deported. Some of their friends who were born and raised here were traumatized as well if families self-deported. If Jose's father was sent to Texas, it creates in our all of our kids. If some of our kids aren't safe, then none of our kids are safe. And so in all of our kids, there's an unrest. If they can do that, who else is it going to be, you know? So there's a question. The current Tennessee legislature promises to be, or the upcoming Tennessee legislature promises to be very similar. I would not be surprised if there are some other preferences that are approached into making policy. Yep. Beyond education, there are some things that have happened recently, I would say within the last 2 months. Tennessee healthcare law was proposed. And this was a fun one. This particular health care bill stated that children who had chronic or life-threatening illnesses that were taking advantage of a particular, and I forget the name of it, a particular funding. Say it again. Thank you, Children's Special Services. That they would have to declare the family's immigration status. That passed. And it was getting ready to be put into, it became policy. And it was getting ready to be put into practice, and there were lawsuits filed by 3 pediatricians in Nashville that stopped that. So now that is under review. And children whose families voluntarily removed them, we're talking about children with leukemia, we're talking about children with spina bifida, we're talking about children that have absolutely no way of paying for the long-term care, and this fund, Children's Special Services, took care of that for them. One of the social workers from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis spoke out against this policy and said this will change everything we do at St. Jude's, because we never ask about the family's ability to pay. We never ask where they're from. If they come to St. Jude's, we're going to take care of them. And that was challenged by the healthcare law that became policy that was jerked back. Whew, dodged that, huh? We'll see what happens next. There have been a couple of Supreme Court decisions. Supreme Court decision on June 25th challenged temporary protected status. What is temporary protected status? Temporary protected status is, by the way, if someone says, as long as they come here legally, I'm fine, but what they don't realize unless you work with immigration, there are 1,000 different ways to come here legally. You can come on a U visa, you can come on a T visa, you can come on a work visa, you can come in through asylum, you can come as a political refugee. I can't even list them all. And I've been doing this for a long time. At the same time, your legal status can change overnight. Literally overnight. Let's take a look at this. Supreme Court ruled against temporary protected status specifically for Venezuelans and Haitians. So we have a lot of Venezuelans in Rutherford County, especially in the Smyrna, North Murfreesboro area. So those that were on temporary protected status, which is a legal status, but you have to check in every so often, depending what country you're from. What's legal for a Haitian may not be legal for a Venezuelan or for a Cuban, so it's complicated. You can't wait in line because there is no line. Or maybe a better way to put it would be, there's 100 different lines. Pick one. And then the line could be closed. So this particular Supreme Court decision overnight stopped temporary protected status for Haitians and Venezuelans specifically. So on June 30th at 11:59, Haitians and Venezuelans were legal. At 12:01 on July 1st, they were not legal. and they were subject to detention and deportation. Again, that has been challenged. So as of today, right now, this minute, it's not being put into practice. Yes, it's policy. It's not being put into practice. That could change. Things change so rapidly. But that is one challenge within the last few weeks that our families have faced. Again, here we are, implications for schools and districts. I'm going to ask you to take a minute to look over this slide, to talk to your neighbor, and see if you've got any questions, concerns, feedback, what you have seen, what has been your lived experience in your school. And we'll take about a minute, and then I will ask you to give me some of your thoughts. Go ahead. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? Concerns you may have, questions, thoughts, experiences?
One thought I had as I was looking over the list you have is potentially also the level of distraction of students who are in my classroom to attending to tasks that, if they've got all the other things, worries on their mind.
Yep. If kids don't feel safe, they don't learn as well. It's not rocket science. We have one there.
I was just going to say that earlier, I know I worked for Metro, so you saw our population size, but we have had a lot more absenteeism, a lot more students missing, and probably one of the hardest things for me as an English learner teacher was the day that my oldest daughter came home, who's a typical peer, and said, "Mommy, my best friend's gone and she's not coming back to school." And so it affects you personally as well. And our PTO group chat is a great resource because as a teacher, we can't always be involved in things that we want to be involved in. But our PTO has been really working on ways to get kids in school and make them feel safe.
Excellent, thank you.
Until recently, I worked at a school that's very, very, very high ESL population. For example, we had 13 ESL teachers. And one thing I noticed is, yes, the children are absorbing that stress and that fear from their parents, but I also noticed that affects behavior as well. So not only does it affect attendance, but it affects behavior of those students in school, and we were noticing a lot more disciplinary action as a result of that.
Exactly, very much so. Thank you. One thing I would encourage us all to do, with registration coming up, I would require your students to memorize an emergency number and to memorize their address, because nobody memorizes phone numbers anymore. I don't. I have to look up my kids' phone numbers. How sad is that? I used to know everybody's phone numbers. I can tell you my phone number from when I was 8 years old. I cannot tell you my daughter's current phone number. Welcome to my world. But I would encourage, I would require our kids to memorize an emergency phone number so that if they need help, they can call it. They can call for it. So yes, what we are seeing, lower school enrollment. In our North County schools, we are seeing fewer kindergartners enroll. Parents are scared. Smyrna Laverne area schools, we have seen fewer kids enrolled. Our ESL population as a whole has either stabilized, hasn't really gone down, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's certainly not increased like it had been. So we're seeing lower school attendance, particularly in areas where there's an increased ICE CPB presence. Increased absenteeism. I can tell you from my own experience, that's what happened. I thought I was going to have to cancel my adult classes completely. They were just too terrified. Orlando, every time Orlando, he's one of my adult dads, every time Orlando comes to class, I am worried that he won't be able to get back home. He's a young construction worker with kids in our Smyrna schools. So increased absenteeism. Also, parents don't want to complete school forms. They're not sure that their information is going to be safe. Who are you going to give this to? Why do you need to know this? This would be a good time to talk to your attendance people and your registration people and give them a way to assure families that this is private, protected by law. We're not going to call ICE on them. We're not going to report them to any authorities. No matter what someone's preference might be, it is not policy. Another thing that we are seeing is families don't want to participate in special services. One teacher that I spoke to specifically told me that they had 2 families that refused to come for IEP meetings because they were afraid that they would be detained at the school. And in this particular case, this is one of our Smyrna schools, both of those children ended up self-deporting. Their families ended up self-deporting. I don't know what their immigration status was, but they didn't feel safe. They didn't feel like they could continue with us. So that may be something that you see. More requests for student records as parents move elsewhere. They may leave the country. So we may get an increase in requests for student records. Or in the case of my little girl, Maria, she went back to Mexico. They never requested her records. So our principal at my school was saying, we've got to find something because she's going to go down as a dropout if we don't get something. And I contacted her, but I was never able to get her to have them formally request her records to her new school in Mexico. I don't know if she was calculated as a dropout or not. I don't know that information. But those are the kinds of things we have seen and we may continue to see. For ESL teachers, we know that the more involved our families are, the better the kids do. So we do things like culture night, right? They're wonderful. We do things like family reading night. And you may see less participation in those. In fact, some of our schools already have. You may want to look at alternatives. Teaching them how to use Zoom on their phones could be something that you could take a look at. But we have already seen a decrease in family engagement because of some of these preferences. Okay, there's the problem. Now what do we do? I would encourage you to take a look at a trauma-informed approach. Now, our Nashville colleagues talked about that this morning. That is a whole thing I cannot get into right now. I wish I could. A few years back, I did all the training to become a trauma-informed educator. And just because I thought it was a cool thing and I didn't think I would ever really need it. Boy, was I wrong. Because I have used those skills so much in the last year and a half. A trauma-informed approach to teaching acknowledges that there is trauma going on, that things are happening. And it prioritizes safety, predictability, fostering trust. That's one of the reasons why I encouraged you. Require your kids to memorize at least one emergency number. preferably more. Encourage your families to have a safety plan, if you can do so safely in your role as a teacher. Learn different ways to cope with students that are having behavior issues due to the trauma that they are seeing and or experiencing. But be careful as you do this in your classroom, because sometimes you get a kid that really gets overwhelmed. So be sure that you've got backup, whether it's a counselor or someone, if you've got a kid that really has a breakdown because dad was taken, like my kid did. In this case, I was the backup, you know. Be sure you've got someone to help hold you up. We can't do this alone. You know, we can't teach them to bump up their scores on their ELPA and to reach their goals and do all these other things at the same time. We're trying to help them feel safe. And we can't do that all by ourselves. You need support. So find your team, find your village. Recognizing signs of trauma in immigrant students. Withdrawal. Now some of our kids, they tend to withdraw anyway, but even more so. Anxiety, hypervigilance, like not wanting to sit by a window or wanting to sit by a window so they can look out all the time. A decline in their speaking and decline in their grades. A fear of authority figure. If you see that your students are all of a sudden afraid of the SRO, which was another thing that happened in my life. That's a different story though, but all of a sudden, one of my boys was afraid of the SRO and didn't want to talk to him. So these are just some signs of trauma in immigrant students. Emotional outbursts. But I'm here to tell you, we've seen these in other kids that are responding to what they're seeing with immigrant children. Okay, now, what does Monday morning look like? And I cannot stress this enough. As an administrator, like I said earlier, I've had several administrators say, what if ICE shows up? Do I have to let them in? No, you do not. So what can we do? First of all, follow your district policies and protocols. You may want to, this is something that every school district has discussed. Like I said, they're not going to put it on their website, or maybe they will, I don't know. But they have discussed what to do in case there is an immigration issue at one of their buildings. Make sure you are familiar with your schools and your district's emergency protocols. Don't share information about we know that already though. Don't share student information without proper authorization. So one of the schools I cover is a high school. Well, I cover a couple of high schools. And we had a kiddo that over the weekend, on a weekend, decided he was going to get into a little bit of mischief. And did something he shouldn't have done. And our local police came to our school to question this child. Had nothing to do with immigration, by the way. Absolutely nothing. Our principal would not let them talk to the child, would not let them into the building. She met them outside, sympathized with their concerns. The child was 17 and said, I'm sorry, FERPA protects our children. So make sure that you are aware and that people in your village, in your team, are aware that FERPA protects our kids from all of this stuff that is happening off school grounds. It protects them from this happening on school grounds. If there is someone, whether it's an agent or an officer or a non-custodial parent, direct them to your in-house counsel or to your principal, and they will direct them to your school system central office and the district council. And here's the hard one. We have to maintain a calm exterior. Our kids need to know that even as freaked out as we might be by the stuff that's going on, we're still here for them. So teacher self-care is extremely important, and I hate to use that term, but I'm going to. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about what happens when a student is 18, not 17, and the can of worms that it opens, especially as the state of Tennessee continues to move the age in which we can enroll kids in kindergarten, and we have so many more students who are 18 years old as a senior, plus ESL, they can stay until they're 21, and that whole can of worms that it just seems to open up as it relates to that.
It does indeed. Notice I referred to my student, he was 17. And we've had this happen. If a student is 18, protections for that student are iffy, and you need to talk to your district leadership and find out what your district policy is. You still are not required to let any officers onto your school property because of the other students. But I'm not sure that we can, depending on your district policy, I'm not sure what protections the 18-year-olds and above have. Once they're off school property, all bets are off. And that has been a challenge, indeed. But if ever you're not sure, refer to your administration and ask them to contact your district council. They are more up on the laws than really even your administrators can be, because that's their job. They have to be. Also communicate factually and transparently with your families. Assure your families, we love your kids. We will do everything in our power to keep them safe while we are here. And we know that from our intruder drills, don't we? We know how to keep a kid safe because we've been taught. So assure our families that their children are going to be safe with us. Now, in your classroom, in my classroom, what are some things we can do? How can we keep our kids focused in learning when there's a storm brewing outside? Predictable routines. In my classroom, my kids know when they come in, I'm going to have bell work on the projector. They are going, and it's the same bell work every day because I'm not that creative. And they have to write in their journal, and they have to do whatever I ask them. It varies slightly. But keep a predictable routine. So when the kids know, even though everything else around them is unpredictable, that in your classroom, it's going to feel safe. It's going to feel normal. Use culturally responsive practices. For example, I'm going to talk about my adult class a little bit more just because I feel a little freer with that. My students love to bring me mangoes, and they love to bring me little bottles of tahini to put on my mangoes, and they know I love that. I also know that they cannot afford to buy those mangoes that they are giving to me. And part of me wants to say, oh, honey, take these home to your family. You eat these. I'm fine. I have not missed a meal in a while. I won't do that because that would hurt them. They are giving this to me from their heart. So I have to be sensitive and culturally responsive and tell them thank you so much and enjoy the mangoes. And I do enjoy the mangoes, by the way. I'm very grateful. Provide emotional check-ins and allow space. You could maybe, with my kids, I have a laminated sheet with emoticons. How are you feeling today? Point to the one you're looking at. Point to this one, point to that one. Just know and be ready if you've got a kid that's feeling scared or angry or upset or worried. Be prepared to deal with that. And connect students to counselors or trauma-informed staff as needed. Be ready for that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our community resources. As teachers, there's only so much we can do in the schools. You have to be very careful of your role. When stuff first started happening, I had teachers contacting me saying, I'm going to print off red cards. If you don't know what red cards are, I'll talk about those in a minute. I'm going to print off red cards and hand them to all my students. Please don't. Please don't. I'm going to hand out whistles to all my kids. Oh, really? Please don't. You're asking for something different there. There are churches and community groups that will help you to give resources to our families. Guard your role. Our role is to support and teach. As much as we may be immigrant rights advocates in our out-of-school life, when we're in school, guard your role for as much your protection as for the children's predictability. And again, this is all in the PowerPoint that you have access to. And don't forget, resilience and hope. I told you all this morning the story about my little boy named Yusuf, whose father owns some furniture stores, and Yusuf, God bless him, he was telling me how to decorate my room and what colors were complementary. And that's just a little bit of joy. And we have got to capitalize on the joy in our teaching, because the stress will eat us alive as we worry for our kids. If you are like some of us, I do home visits. I visit the workplaces as much as is appropriate and as much as I have time for. If I wasn't careful, the stress and sorrow would eat me alive. But moments of joy, the mangoes with tahine, the crazy little boy that was telling me that turquoise and orange were complementary. Those are the moments that we need to hold on to and to cherish. And remind the kids that they are important. They are resilient. There's something called compassion fatigue. And I've touched on this. Working with traumatized kids, whether it's immigrant or kids that are institutionalized for another reason, you have got to make sure that you take care of yourselves. Build your team, build your group, build a community of care. These are some resources that I have put in the PowerPoint for you. Some of them are explainers, but I do want to call your attention to one particular resource. I did not print off any handouts because IDRA is the best place to get handouts. They're beautiful. I couldn't have done as wonderful a job as they did. If you want a quick poster to print off, to pass along to your administration, IDRA is the place to go. If you want practices to create a welcoming classroom, IDRA has a poster for that. The rest of these citations, I would certainly, as you feel led, take a look at them. This is where I got a lot of my information from. But the one, if I had lots of time, I would take you to would be IDRA. Also TIRC. TIRC is in Nashville, TIRRC, and they have webinars and workshops. They are committed to keeping us informed. Okay, any questions, thoughts, concerns, stories?
There are a couple of stories on the live feed. People kind of reiterating that they've noticed students stressed, afraid of what will happen, that students have moved away, that family engagement events have declined, that there's registration has been really frustrating because families are afraid to register and registering late. So the newcomer populations have gone down. I just wanted to say that the folks have been typing in the comments so that they've seen some similar trends or some similar anecdotes in their schools. I think that the other comment was, and I think this one was addressed or questioned, is the organization that helps parents understands the laws and their rights. And you just mentioned Turk, and that IDRA is another good resource for that. So just wanted to explicitly address that question from an online participant to say these resources can be really helpful.
Also, Tennessee TESOL has, they can point you in the right direction. And I have a Substack called At the Welcome Table. It is not live yet. I've been working on it this summer. But you can email me and I will add you when it goes live, probably August 1st. And I put lots of stuff on there. Thank you, Dr. McLean. All right then, if that is everything, then I will turn this back over to Dr. Clark.
Thank you, Dr. Pariso, for those that information. You know, we've had sessions here before about how to take care of our kids, how to teach our kids, how to understand their behaviors and why they're having behaviors in light of what's happening in their outside life. Of course, we do that with all of our kids, knowing that the life outside of school affects how they act, how they feel, how they learn, and how resilient and hopeful they are. So this is a situation unique to English learners, so I thought it was timely for us to hear what has happened recently in the state legislature and how it applies to our work in the classroom and in schools with our children. So thank you, Dr. Pariso, for that.